Yirmiyahu was a prophet, was a good chaver of mine. Never understood a single word he said, but we helped him to drink his yain. And we always had some mighty fine yain. Singing Simchat Le'olam, Kol HaYeladim now. Simchat to the dogim in the deep blue sea. Simchat to you and me.
Welcome to the Haftarah Plethora video Zoomcast, where we bring a little joy to the world by talking about prophets like Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. But we're in the third week of a 4-week streak of reading from the minor league of prophets, and this week it's Ovadia.
Or Obadiah. Didn't the Beatles write a song about him? Obadiah, Ovadia, life goes on, brah, la 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 la, life goes on. No?
No, Rick. I think that's Obladi, Oblada. But I actually like the thought. We'll get back to Obadiah in a moment. I'm Larry Herman, sipping some very fine wine and talking Haftarah with my very good chaver, the king of cannellation, Rick Muller. How you doing this week, Rick?
I'm great. Happy as I can be. I'm chanting Torah this coming Shabbat. That always brings my spirits up.
And I'm sure you'll have a Tropdrash to share with the Kahal this week. That's always a big hit amongst the Kanyasenti.
We'll see. The who?
Kanyasenti, you know, the people in the know.
Oh, you mean the cognoscenti?
Rick, the Kanyasenti say Kanyasenti and not cognoscenti.
Well, I might not know the sophisticated pronunciation of cognoscenti, but I know how to pronounce and chant Haftorah. And I also know you've got some Millie news for us. So let's get right to Millie time.
Rick, I'm always happy to talk about my granddaughter, Millie. This week, Millie went to a park and got a ride on a swing.
Did she enjoy that?
She really did, even if she doesn't look like it in the photo. She also went down a slide with a friend, the granddaughter of our Rashi classmate, Renee.
Not so clear she's happy about that.
She was unsure at first, but she really enjoyed meeting someone her own age. She's quite the social animal. She's also into cars, especially the classic variety.
Are you sure she's into cars or her parents are into cars?
That too. But one thing's for sure, she loves reading books, or at least looking at the pictures in books.
Almost looks like she's davening there.
Not yet, but soon. You should hear her. Okay, Rick, let's get back to the Haftarah. This week's reading is the entire book of Ovadia. But don't worry, the entire book of Ovadia consists of exactly one chapter, 21 verses, and just 291 words.
You really counted that?
No, but the Jewish Study Bible did.
Oh, okay. So he was a prolific writer?
Not at all. In fact, once again, we're left to wonder exactly who wrote this book and who he was. Do you remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about Malachi and I questioned whether Malachi was the prophet's name or whether Malachi is only a description, as in my messenger?
Yes, I do.
Well, this week, we can again question whether Ovadia is a name or a title. In this case, it would be Ovid Yah, servant of Yah, Yah being one of the names for God.
That would make sense. But even still, that could just be his name, right?
True, but there's more. You actually know Ovadia's name in another language. It's super common.
Let's see, servant of God. How about Severide? How about Eric Severide, the old newscaster?
Very funny. You think that's common? No, I'm not speaking about an English name or one single person's name, but a very common name in Arabic. It's Abdullah. In the Arabic translation of the Bible, Ovadia is Abdullah, meaning servant of God.
The things you learn in Haftarah Plethora.
I'm not done. There are a number of Ovadias in the Tanakh. Perhaps the most well-known is the Ovadia who was the servant of King Ahab in the 9th century BCE. There are more than 10 separate references to an Ovadia, most of them not particularly important characters in the narrative, which suggests that the word is in fact a descriptive title and not a personal name.
So then how did this guy merit his own book in the Bible, even if it's only one chapter?
According to the Talmud, Ovadia is a minor character from the book of Job. He's supposed to be a convert to Judaism from the tribe of Edom.
Aha, I'm beginning to see the connection. Edom is Esau, Esau and Jacob, connection to the Parsha.
Right, Rick. Who better to prophesize against the Edomites than someone who knows them intimately, because he is an Edomite, at least according to the Midrash. Of course, I'm getting ahead of myself since we haven't even talked about the contents of the chapter.
Book.
Okay, book. It's all in one. The book of Ovadia, and it's a rant against the tribe of Edom. Historically, at least, in the biblical version of history, Edom was the tribe on the eastern borders of Judea and Israel. Since they were supposed to be the descendants of Esau, the brother of Jacob, or Yisrael, the Edomites were the Israelites' brothers or cousins. Now, according to tradition, if not the Bible itself, the Edomites conspired with the Babylonians in the downfall of Jerusalem at the beginning of the 6th century BCE. And so Ovadia, whoever he was, prophesizing around the time of the exile or shortly after the return, foresees the downfall of Edom because of their betrayal. They failed to come to the aid of their kin, perhaps even participating in the looting of Jerusalem. And as a result, God would punish them. Israel and Jacob would prevail, as the last line of the chapter, last line of the book prophesizes. That last verse will be familiar to anyone who regularly davens, at least the morning service, as it's the last line of the Pesukim de Zimra service, just following the Song of the Sea, and just before we enter Shacharit with Yishtabach. And it goes, Va'alu Mosheim b'har Tzion lishpot et har Esav, v'haita l'Adonai hamlucha. You'll chant it later. For liberators shall march up on Mount Zion to wreak judgment on Mount Esau, and the dominion shall be the Lord's. This, in a nutshell, is the narrative of our text for this week.
I'm waiting my turn here.
In just a minute, I just have 2 more points to make. The first is that part of our text, verses 2 through 6, are replicated almost exactly in Jeremiah.
So maybe Ovadia was Jeremiah.
Well, there are actually 3 theories about this. One is that Ovadia borrowed from Jeremiah. Another is that Jeremiah borrowed from Ovadia. And the third is that both borrowed from a common older source. To me, at least, this suggests that Ovadia was not a person or prophet at all, but the pseudonym to whoever wrote this chapter.
Book.
Okay, book. With the clear political purpose of attacking the Edomites. Perhaps it was intended to be inserted elsewhere. But, and this is my last point, don't forget that Edom became a euphemism for Rome in Talmudic times, and possibly a term for all of our enemies even before that. So maybe this book had its origins even later, when the real threat was indeed someone other than Edom, perhaps the Babylonians, the Greeks, or even the Romans. I've not seen anyone suggest this, but it at least seems credible that all of this was invented as a political polemic.
Very interesting theory, man. But I work with what I've got in front of me, so why don't we get to the chanting? How should we split up the text?
All right. I think that we should divide it into thirds. We'll start with verses 1 through 7, which introduce the prophet without any personal details, and then include the condemnation of Edom. In verses 8 through 5, we have the judgment against Edom for its role against Judah. And finally, we'll conclude with verses 16 through 21, which describes the rescue and salvation of Judah and the demise of Esau.
Perfect. So let me start with what I see in the first part. This guy Ovadia, whoever he was, whatever his real name was, he's angry. He starts out with a pair of dramatic Kadmaviaz laws in the first verse. Adonai Elohim, the 2 curves on top of that. Shmuah Shamanu, the 2 curves on top of that. It's led in with the Koamar, Telisha Katana, announcing the vision. It's very common with the prophets to have Koamar. And Then it goes to Edom, the Ravia, in the middle of those two Kadmavi Azlaz, Edom, that the downfall of Edom, if you want to imagine some directionality to the falling music of the Ravia, da 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 da. That's all in that first verse. And then in verse 2, and then also in verse 1, Kumu, there's a tavir there, and it means rise up, but the tavir goes down and then it comes up. So it's kind of a counterintuitive there. It's kind of a dissonant that it's saying rise up, but you go down. But you could say, well, you got to go down, you got to hit the bottom before you can go up.
All right, could be.
There's that cliche. And then the rest of the first section, what I would talk about is verse 2. Hine katon. Ovadia is kind of insulting Edom, saying how small they are and insignificant.
And using the same tavir to do it.
Yes, thank you. And then a couple of yativs, verse 6 on Ech, the high note Ech is of the yativ. How can this happen to Esau? Which echoes in my mind to Echa trope and how horrible it is, all the things that happen to us.
So another connection to Jeremiah.
Yes, using the same Ech and the same yativ. And then Kol Anshe Veritecha, Ovadia is pointing out, he's calling out all the treachery that Esau did by not coming to our aid.
Great. Rick, if you're ready, let's hear you chant the first 7 verses of the chapter and book of Ovadia. The text is found on page 222 of the Eitz Chaim Chumash, or you can follow along the screen with Norm's beautifully formatted text.
First, the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Chazon Ovadia ko amar Adonai Elohim le'edom shmua shamanu me'et Adonai v'tzir hagoyim shulach kumu v'nakuma alecha lamilchama hine katon netaticha bagoyim bazuyata me'od zdon libcha hishiecha shochni v'chag v'sela merom shivto omer belibo mi yorideni aretz im tagbi ach kanesher v'im ben kochavim simkinecha misham oridcha neum Adonai im ganavim ba'u lecha im shod de laila ech nidmeta halo yignevu dayam im botzrim ba'ulach halo yashiru olelot ech nechpesu esav nivu matzpunav ad hagavul shilchucha kol anshe veritecha ishiucha yachlu lecha anshe shlomecha lachmecha yasimu mazor tachtecha ein tevuna bo.
Great reading, Rick. This next section is the judgment against Edom. First comes the punishment, destruction of Edom, and terror for the survivors. Then in verses 8 through 14 is the bill of indictment, namely that Edom and Esau stood by, assisted and gloated as Judah was being ravaged by its enemies. And finally, in verse 15, a great summation. Ka'asher asita ya'aseh lach. As you have done, it shall be done to you.
So there's not much trope-wise here, but I'll give it a go. Verse 11, there's a ger shayim on v'nochrim, on foreigners. So it's highlighting that word. And the implication is that Esau, the tribe of Esau, were acting like foreigners. They didn't help us. They weren't like family and friends trying to help. And then in verse 13, Altera has the dargah and gamata, the tavir, which literally is don't look. And the Eitz Chaim translation has gaze in glee. How could you gaze in glee? But I think it's really the command, Altera, you shouldn't be looking on our misfortune.
And in fact, Alter translates it as don't gloat on your part. So once again, the JPS seems to let us down.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's about it. So 8 to 15.
Let's go.
Hello, bayom hahu numadonai dehavati chachamim me'edom utvuna meharesav v'chatu giborecha teman leman yikaret ish meharesav mikatel. That's also a high point. The outrage to your brother. Anyway, verse 10. Mechamas achicha Yaakov techascha vusha v'nichrata leolam beyom amarcha mineged beyom shvot zarim chelo v'nochrim ba'u sha'arav ve'al Yerushalayim yadu goral gamata ke'achad mehem ve'al tereh ve'yom achicha ve'yom nochro ve'al tismach livnei Yehuda ve'yom avdam ve'al tagdel picha ve'yom tzara al tavo v'sha'arami ve'yom edam al tere gamata ve'ra'ato ve'yom edo ve'al tishlachna v'chelo ve'yom edo ve'al ta'amod al ha'perek lehachrit et plitav ve'al tasger sridav ve'yom tzara ki karov yom Adonai al kol hagoyim kasher asita ye'aselach gemulcha yashuv baroshecha.
I was just having a sip there, Rick. Great. Rick, the last section starts off a bit confusing for me. Verse 16 starts off, Ki ka'asher shatitam al har kodshi yishtu kol hagoyim tamid. As you drank, and I was just drinking, on my holy mountain, all the nations shall drink evermore. Is this verse addressed to the Edomites or the Israelites?
Well, I think it's the Edomites, continuing the ideas of verse 15.
Rick, you're right on the mark. The Jewish Study Bible actually thinks that the first half of verse 15 belongs with the previous verses, as you read them, condemning Esau, and that the second half is connected to the rest of the book, which we'll chant in a minute, talking about the salvation for post-monarchic Israel. But from verse 18 onward, it becomes clear that Ovadia is talking about the redemption of the house of Jacob, which shall destroy Esau.
Okay, and in verse 18, we have more special trope on V'haya, that's the Tilisha Ktana, and it shall be. So people's ears perk up when the prophet says, this is what's going to happen, is my guess. Ve-Yaakov Eish. So there's your Kadma V'Azla again. And it's repeated on V'Yarshu HaNegev in verse 19. So it's talking about this, the flame of Yaakov, actually the ember is going to be revived and reconstructed, and they're going to inherit the land, not Esau anymore. And then
it's a real incendiary verse there, Rick, because you've got the fire of Jacob, and you've got the flame of the house of Joseph.
Yes, lots of combustibles. And then in verse 20 we have the word Vigalut, and of course that's been turned into Galus, the Yiddish pronunciation of the people in the exile. And there you have a Talisha Gedolah, which is the only one here, if I'm remembering right. Very rare, and it's on the word Hazeh, which is just an insignificant word. But I'm of the opinion that lots of insignificant words get special trope on them to bring out their meaning more. And it's this little remnant, this little ember that is going to grow back into the people. So I like the Masoretes putting special trope on teeny little words.
That's right. And I heard in the rabbi's class today, he said they did what God told them.
Yes.
To do.
Right.
Maybe. But we have here, that's right. We have the theme that the house of Israel will inherit all of the land of Esau. So we end with the well-known line from the end of Pesukei de Zimra that we mentioned earlier, concluding with the prophesied triumph of the surviving remnants of Jacob over their enemies. Rick, take us home with verses 16 through 21.
Ki kasher shtitem al har kodshi yishtu chol hagoyim tamid v'shatu v'lau v'hayu kilo hayu uv'har Tzion tiyeh fleta v'haya kodesh v'yarshu beit Yaakov et morashehem v'haya beit Yaakov esh uvet Yosef lehava uvet Esav lekash v'daku vahem v'chalum v'lo yeh sarid lebeit Esav ki Adonai diber v'yarshu hanegev et har Esav v'hashpela et Plishtim v'yarshu et sdei Ephraim v'et sdei Shomron u'Vinyamin et Gilad v'galut hachel hazer livnei Yisrael asher Knaanim ad Sarfat v'galut Yerushalayim asher bisfarad Yirshu et arei hanegev ve'alu moshim behar Tzion lishpot et har Esav v'haital Adonai amlucha.
Thank you, Rick. Very good. You know, I think I'm going to think differently about that last line when I recite it every morning, just at the end of Shirat Hayam and before the Yishtabach. Well, we want to thank our graphical wizard, musical director, and chief jokester, Norm Gar, for everything that he does. Rick, I had the pleasure this week of hearing from Bob and Diane Roost, who say that they don't miss any of our Zoomcasts. So we know that you are out there, viewers, Just send us an email once in a while. We'll include your names, and next time you'll be famous. Or if you're embarrassed, we'll use a pseudonym, just like Ovadia, perhaps. Our emails are below, and if you like our Zoomcast, please forward the link to your friends and family. We'll be back next week, even though it's Thanksgiving weekend, so we'll hold off on wishing you a Chag Hodu Sameach until next week.
Hodu Sameach.
Yeah, happy turkey holiday.
Right, okay. Gobble, gobble.
All right, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos.